Hi class, welcome to week 2. This is your week 2 lecture. We're going to have a longer lecture this time because it is the start of a unit. So every now and then you're going to have very long lectures. Some weeks you're going to have fewer. It's going to be shorter simply because you will be drafting and revising most of that week. So this week we're starting our unit in the natural sciences. We're going to start talking about our first project. So it's going to be a fairly long lecture. So settle in. Today, we're going to talk about academic disciplines, writing in the natural sciences, scholarly and popular sources, and Project 1. These are all really important foundational concepts that you need to make sure you understand. So if you need to take a break after a section, please do so. So the first thing that we need to understand before we jump into any of these disciplines is what is an academic discipline. So an academic discipline is an area of teaching, research, and inquiry, so questioning, that academics pursue. These can be narrowly defined as like English literature or neurobiology, but we're going to focus on big picture disciplines, so groups of more narrow disciplines that fit under a larger umbrella because they ask similar questions and try to answer those questions in similar ways. So the first one I'm going to talk about today, it's not the first one we're going to talk about, and that's the humanities. Most of you are probably familiar with writing in this discipline. This is probably the most familiar to you because most of your writing was likely done in English class, and English is part of the humanities. So the humanities ask questions about the human condition. They use analysis, interpretation, and speculation to answer these questions. So some fields that fall under this discipline are history, literature, philosophy, foreign languages, religious studies, and the fine arts like painting or writing, like fiction writing, poetry. So all of these disciplines, they are investigating, so scholars in these disciplines, if I'm a scholar of history, I'm looking at history and studying it in order to find out something about the human condition, what it means to be a human. And the way we're going to go into more details about what I mean here by analysis, interpretation, and speculation. Other fields will use other methods of answering these questions, like the social sciences. So the social sciences ask questions about human behavior and society. So different from the humanities, where it's looking at the human condition, more like what does it mean to be human. The social sciences is very focused on human behavior, social structures. They focus on theory building or empirical research. So empirical research, I think most of you are familiar with what that means from science classes, but that just means like data. They want actual data to study these things. Now, some smaller fields, more narrow fields that fall under the social sciences includes communications, psychology, sociology, political science, economics, and anthropology. Each of these disciplines is investigating human behavior in society. Now, the one that we are going to talk about in our first unit is the natural sciences. The natural sciences ask questions about the natural world. It may investigate a natural aspect of humanity, like with neuroscience, but it's not asking about human behavior, why we behave the way that we do. So in the natural sciences, they use experimentation and quantifiable data to answer these questions about the natural world. And some fields within the natural sciences include chemistry, biology, physics, astronomy, and mathematics. Now there's one that I don't have up here, but I think it's really important for you to know, and that is the applied fields. So the applied fields are things like education, or like many of you who are in the agriculture major, you plan to go into agriculture, those take the questions and ideas and the research from one or more of these other disciplines, so humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences, but applies them to a specific purpose. So in education, there's a lot of psychology behind education, but education is the application of research in the social sciences, so it doesn't fall under the social sciences, if that makes sense. Business is another applied field as well. So things to think about. Now, we're going to talk about Project 1. And for Project 1, we're focusing on the natural sciences. And as we're doing this, we're paying particular attention to how scholarly writing, so like lab or experimental reports, how those differ from popular writing in the field. And by popular writing, I'm talking about like magazine articles, blog posts, press release, etc. So, before we dive into Project 1, I want to talk about general conventions of writing and doing research in the natural sciences. So, those who work in the natural sciences, they are studying observable phenomena in the natural world and searching for answers to questions that spark their interest about these phenomena. So when we're talking about chemistry, there's something you can observe about how elements interact. So observing that phenomena, you are going to then create some sort of question after doing observation, research it, and try to answer why does this happen? So scholars in the natural sciences, they have some common values and procedures that they all use. I'm sure you've heard of the scientific method before. Well, there's something called the scientific writing process, and it has basically the same steps as the scientific method. So all research in the natural sciences begins with careful observation of some natural phenomena, and that leads to the development of research questions. So, asking questions about why this phenomena occurs. Once there's been a research question after lots of observation, then this will be followed by an investigation. So, doing an experiment, for example. And once this investigation is complete, scientists will report the publication of that research, report their findings. So they will observe and describe, so observe a natural phenomena and describe it. They will speculate, ask themselves, why does this happen? They'll come up with a hypothesis. Then they will conduct an experiment, and then they will report on that experiment. And we're going to be looking at some scientific reports for Project 1. So, research in the natural sciences, what are these scientists doing? Well, they're collecting, analyzing, and explaining data. That is the job of research in the natural sciences. So they all natural scientists in the natural sciences, they collect evidence through systematic observation and experimentation. So they all have similar values that you'll see in their writing. And it's very organized. It's systematic. There are steps involved. There's a lot of organization. So a researcher in the natural sciences will follow a regular and logical schedule of observation. So nothing is left up to chance in the natural sciences. Well, why? Because in the natural sciences, they're trying to minimize or eliminate bias. And if you don't have control set up, then your bias might come into your research. So scientists really like to be organized, they like to eliminate bias, and they like to focus on what is observable. They value methods, and by methods I mean how they conduct their research, that are quantifiable, which means there is numerical data involved, and replicable. So replicable means that you can repeat it. You will get the same finding multiple times. This is very different from the humanities, which we're going to talk about next. The humanities could not be more different from the natural sciences, except that both involve observation. So, There's different kinds of writing in the natural sciences in a broad level, and those are description and speculation. So scientists will start with description. They'll describe what they notice, the action outcome associated with an observation. So if I'm observing some sort of plant, I'm going to have maybe a logbook and describe what I can perceive with my senses. So how I might measure it, I might talk about the color, things that I can describe. Once there's been enough observation, scientists move to speculative writing. So speculative writing, they're speculating on why or how something behaves the way it does. So I would think, why do plants grow better with, I don't know, classical music than rock music? I'm clearly not a scientist, so ignore my fake experiments. But the example of speculative writing, so you'll see research questions or the formulation of a thesis, though more likely in the natural sciences that will be a hypothesis. But a researcher must first observe and describe before they speculate. So you have to come up with this research question and hypothesis. It will develop from the observations. So, as I said, writing research questions is very important to the natural sciences, and it is done after conducting observations and collecting data. Now, there are two types of questions that you can formulate. There are closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. So both are fine. It just depends on your purpose and the topic for which kind of research question a natural scientist is going to formulate. So remember how we talked about rhetorical situation last week, and that's purpose, audience, genre, stance, media, and design. Well, all of those will help the scientist decide what kind of question they need to ask. So, a closed-ended question can be answered by yes or no. So, for example, is global warming real? Yes or no. That is a valid research question. An open-ended research question provokes a fuller response. So instead of is global warming real, it would be what factors contribute to global warming. So if you're engaging in a controversial subject, sometimes a closed-ended question is better. But if you're looking for a more complete answer to a complex issue, an open-ended question may be better. Most of what you'll see are open-ended questions, responses to open-ended questions. Okay, so now that we talked about research in the natural sciences and what scholars in the natural sciences value, how they systemize their research and writing, we need to talk about what conventions are in the natural sciences in writing. So what does writing look like in the natural sciences? What choices do authors make in the natural sciences, and why? We talked a little bit about this, but here we go. Values shared among members of the scientific community include objectivity. So that means trying to be as unbiased as possible. Replicability, which is being able to repeat the experiment and get the same findings. Recency, which refers to the latest. What is the latest research? So in the natural sciences, things move very quickly. So you probably won't see a lot of scholars in the natural sciences citing research from like 100 years ago, because things have changed. The latest cutting edge research is what is most important. So they're looking for things that are recency. And scientists also value cooperation and collaboration. So we're going to talk about each of these and how these values manifest in writing in the natural sciences. So, objectivity. Scientists use a few strategies to convey objectivity in their writing to show that they are not biased. You'll see this in their titles. They prefer non-rhetorical, so like not playful titles. Their titles are usually descriptive. They say exactly what the report is about. So when you're looking at the title of a report in the natural sciences, it's not going to be clever. It's just going to tell you exactly what this experiment is and probably what the finding was too. Most reports in the natural sciences are structured in the same way, so the same format, and that is called IMRAD format. Anytime, and you'll see this in the social sciences too, especially if it is related to something quantifiable, like an experiment. So the parts of a natural sciences report tend to be as follows: an introduction, methods, results, and discussion. So the introduction is where they'll give context to, okay, this is the research around this topic and why this is important. Methods, they will talk about the methodology. What exactly did they do in this experiment? Results are, okay, what were the results of that experiment? And then discussion, that is where they are interpreting those results. Now, if you look at a report in the natural sciences, you're probably going to be confused because they use a lot of specialized jargon. So these are highly complex words, and the reason that scholars in the natural sciences use this is to be as precise as possible. So you'll see the Latin names for, let's say, a rose. It'll be the certain Latin name of that. So they know, okay, which kind of rose. It's very important to be as detailed as possible because of I cannot say this word. Replicability. Oh my gosh. Having a day, y'all. Okay. So this is going to go in with audience, which we're going to talk about soon. Jargon. When you see jargon in the natural sciences, it's a scholar who's doing a report. They're using very highly complex words. They are assuming their audience already has this foundational understanding, knows what these words are, so they don't have to make it general because the audience is other scholars. So that's why you'll see a lot of jargon in the natural sciences. Numbers, can't get more objective than numbers. So you'll see a lot of charts and figures and numbers. These are very fixed in their ability to communicate a specific meaning. So you could have the word tall, like the plant was tall. Great. How tall? What's tall for you might not be tall for me. So an example where numbers are more precise and objective is, oh, it was 6'11". So being more objective with numbers. Replicability. Wow. Why was it so hard for me to say on that last slide? So, as we talked about, it's very important that an experiment can be repeated and get the same result. That's how we find out if you're onto something, if it's true. So it's necessary to verify research. So we need to verify the results of a study by repeating it multiple times. So there are some strategies in writing in the natural sciences that lead to replicability. And the first one is detail. You'll notice, especially in the methods section of a scientific report, that they go into incredible detail about everything they did in this experiment. And if you are not a scientist, you are probably like, why am I reading this? This is really boring. What does this tell me? Well, it's because it's for another scientist. It's not supposed to be interesting. The point is to communicate how the study was done so that other researchers can repeat it and verify those results. So in the natural sciences, you're going to see some really big paragraphs in these reports. Another way to ensure replicability is to formulate a hypothesis to predict the outcome of a study. And the point of a hypothesis is that it leaves open the possibility of other outcomes. It acknowledges that another researcher could potentially find different results. And that's why a hypothesis is different from a thesis. A thesis, the research has been done, they're positing an interpretation. You will see that in the humanities. And of course, precision. So being as precise as possible, you're trying to be exact, they're trying to be accurate. That allows other scientists to repeat the study. Recency. So it's important for scientific researchers to remain current on the developments in research in their respective fields of study. So you'll notice that they're drawing on current knowledge and recent work in that field. And they're typically going to reference work that's been recently published. So if you look at the dates in a reference page or pages, because they usually use a lot, you'll notice that tends to be very recent to when their study was done. And then, of course, documentation. We're going to talk about this. Well, we don't actually need to do CSE, but I want you to know about CSE. It's a type of documentation style. So you probably know MLA, maybe APA. CSE is the one that is used in the natural sciences, and it requires a last name and a year. So when you do MLA citation, you tend to put last name and page number, because in the humanities, they value detail in how language is used. So you want to be able to direct your reader to the page where you pulled a quote. In the natural sciences, they don't really care about how something was said. They want to know what was said and when. When was this research done? How recent is it? So they will use the year. They'll have the last name and the year to see, because they value how current the research is more than how was it said. And then, of course, they value cooperation and collaboration. How will you see that in their writing? Well, researchers network together, so you're going to typically see a lot of names of the authors, and that's because they include the researchers' names, often all the members of the research team. Now, the people who are listed first, those are the principal researchers, but typically you'll see a lot of other researchers listed as well. So in the natural sciences, if a scientist disagrees with another scientist in their findings, you won't see it as, when they talk about it, it's not going to be like an attack on this person, like, oh, this scientist is wrong, is a horrible person. They focus on the research and the findings, not the person, which is different from the humanities, where they will quote another scholar and say, his interpretation says this, but it's wrong because this. It's not about that. In the natural sciences, they're looking at the work, not the individual scientist. So when they're objecting to research findings, it's going to be focused on the findings and not directly about the researcher. Oh, did I already go down there? Okay, so different genres of writing in the natural sciences include observation logbooks. That's where scientists are logging their observations. Pretty self-explanatory. That's my dog. He's dreaming. He's very cute, but annoying. You'll see lab reports, which are in that MRAD format. That's what we're going to be focusing on for Project 1. Marty. Shh. Marty, wake up. My dog is dreaming. His name is Marty. Marty, hold. Marty, stop dreaming. All right, sorry. Oh, man. Okay. And then you'll see research proposals. So that's when a scientist is talking about a research study they want to do, and they might be trying to get approval to do it. They might be trying to get funding for it. And that will include a title page, an introduction, probably a literature review. And we're going to write a literature review this semester, but for the social sciences. It will include the methods that they plan to use in this experiment, and then references. So citing the research on this topic, which ties into the literature review. Okay, so that's research in the natural sciences, that's writing conventions in the natural sciences. If you want to take a break, I suggest you do it now, because then we're going to talk about scholarly and popular sources, and that is incredibly important because it's the focus of Project 1, but it applies to every other discipline we're going to talk about too. This is a concept that spans all disciplines and really all academic writing. Here, I think this is really useful to you. These are from the library website. Can it take me? Okay, so this first link, and I'll have the slides up on Moodle, on Moodle so that you can look at these too. This is a quick video about peer review, and this is not talking about the type of peer review you do in class where you have a classmate read over your work and give you feedback. That's not what this is. Peer review here means that other scholars who are valued in the field are going to read someone's research and decide if that should be published. So it kind of gives it credibility. So I would like you to watch this. I think it will help you. So it's only 3 minutes. So if you need to pause now and go watch it, you can do that. I'll wait. Okay. The other video, I think it's a video. I don't really remember. Let's see what we're gonna find. Evaluating sources. Okay, so here, this webpage, it talks about evaluating sources for credibility. This is also 3 minutes, so go watch it. Okay, you'll see that there's different types of writing. So scholarly, popular, and trade. You don't hear about trade a lot, but it's also important. So here's an example of a scholarly journal. It's the Journal of Food Science and Technology. A scholarly journal, the main difference between scholarly work and popular work is the audience. Who is this intended for? So in a scholarly journal, it says it in the name, it's scholars writing for other scholars. So that means they're going to make different decisions, different rhetorical decisions in their writing than someone who's writing for a popular magazine. And by popular, I don't mean like the jocks and whatever. I don't know, but I obviously was not a jock. I was in a band. I played the oboe. I'll have to show you guys a picture of me in 6th grade playing the oboe. It's terrifying. Popular magazine, that's for the general public, the populace. So for not scholars. So I'm sure scholars read it if they're interested, but it's not written for other scholars who are doing research. It's written to inform the general public about the research. So, and that's exactly what we're going to do for Project 1. You will choose one of, I think it's 3 or 4 scholarly articles, and you're going to turn it into, translate it, adapt it into a popular article, something that is informing the general public about the research. And then there is the trade magazines, and those are focused on, this is kind of like the applied fields in a way, where it's taking the research and applying it. Trade magazines and journals are focused on professionals in a field. So here, Food Management Magazine, that is for people who work in food management. So that is a more specific audience. They're not researchers, so it's not really scholarly. They're not just the general public. They have knowledge of food management. So it's not a popular source, because if I'm not in food management, I probably won't understand a lot of stuff in that, and I also won't care. If I am in food management, I'm a professional, maybe I run a restaurant, I would be interested in Food Management Magazine. It probably will take some of this research and apply it to my field. So there's a lot of trade. So my bachelor's is in education, secondary education, and English literature. So education, which is an applied field, there are a lot of journals that are directed for educators that are not necessarily scholarly articles. So that's those links, which you have access to. Okay, then we're going to talk about Project 1. So a few things I want to talk about, probably just one thing that I want to reiterate with scholarly and popular sources. So a scholarly source, audience is the most important thing. So it's a scholar writing for other scholars. Get that in your head. And then popular source, it could be a scholar. A scholar could write a popular source. They sometimes do. Generally, it's a freelance writer. I used to do some freelance writing. So popular science writers, they're usually not scientists. Sometimes they might be, but they're writers. So they will read an interesting scholarly article, hear about it, go read the journal, the report the scientist made, and then write it in a way that the general public, so a reader of the New York Times or Cosmopolitan magazine, can understand. And it's going to leave out a lot of stuff, like the methods, because the general public probably doesn't care about the methods section. They're probably going to focus on the introduction, so the context, and then the results in the discussion. And we're going to talk about that more. I'm going to pause. I will be right back. Well, for you, well, I need some water. I'm back, and for you, that was no time at all. For me, it was literally like 20 seconds. So, Project 1. It is 20% of your grade. We're going to talk about Project 1, and basically, here's what you're doing. You're choosing a scholarly article, and I have your options in Moodle under week 2, and then you're going to choose a publication. These are some of them. I think these are all of them. So, you might be translating the scholarly article for BuzzFeed or Psychology Today, Cosmopolitan Magazine, Southern Living, the New York Times. Each publication has a different style, they have different audiences, they have a different purpose in communicating information, and so the way you're going to translate the scholarly article is going to depend a lot on which publication you choose. So, let me go down here. Here's week 2. Here is the assignment sheet for Project 1. So I'm not going to read through this for you. I'm just going to highlight some things. You need to read through this on your own. I tell you what the project is. I tell you a little bit about science writing and writing in scholarly and popular sources. It's going to cover some of what we're talking about here. So here's your 3 options for articles and that you can choose. They're right here. One's about hormone changes in falling in love. Another one is about lethal injection, like for execution. Morbid, I know. And one is about maternal and fetal exposure to pesticides and genetically modified foods in eastern townships of Quebec, Canada. Notice how descriptive that is? That really goes to the precision and the detail and the objectivity valued in the natural sciences. So, you can find these articles on Moodle. Right here. Open that. It's a folder. There's your 3 articles. I suggest you at least skim all of them because you're gonna have to have some sort of enthusiasm, or at least pretend you have enthusiasm about whatever your topic is. So pick the one that is most important to you. Once you've chosen your scientific article, you are going to think, what publication do I want to write this for? So let's take a look at some of these. Most people who do BuzzFeed, you don't have to do BuzzFeed News. You can just do BuzzFeed. So let's go here. And I want you to do the design too. So I'll show you some samples in a minute, but students do pretty impressive stuff where it looks like that. Let me see if I can find something about science. This is exactly what class would be like if we were in person, except that I could see you and I would not be talking to myself. Oh, science. Which trendy food am I? I wish I knew. Okay, well, I can't really find anything, but, ooh, interesting. So I'm going to show you samples of what students did for BuzzFeed. But you can make it look like a BuzzFeed listicle, but you're going to be conveying scientific information for this audience. Now, thinking about audience, the audience for BuzzFeed is probably not like a 60-year-old guy who's retired. Okay, that's not the people who really care about BuzzFeed. It's a younger audience, interested in entertainment and interesting facts, etc. Interesting facts. I don't even know what that means, but definitely targeted at a younger audience. Boop. Okay. Your other choices. So let's look at Psychology Today. So obviously you probably don't want to use some of these articles. Not every article is going to work for Psychology Today because it doesn't have anything to do with psychology. So you can take a look. What really holds relationships together? It's not love. What is it? So let's see here. This guy's talking about his book. I don't know if he's a scholar or not. But you'll notice this looks a lot different from BuzzFeed. So I'm choosing, oh, he is a scholar. He's got a PhD. So yeah, he's This is an example of a scholar who is explaining his research and work for the general public, the person who is reading Psychology Today. So that's an example there. Let's go to Cosmo. It's going to be interesting. So like the one about falling in love, that might work for Cosmo. Obviously, they have a very specific audience they are targeting here. Like, look at it. This is also not going to be that 6-year-old man who's retired. He doesn't want to read cosmopolitan.com. If he does, cool, but I don't think he does. He might not. This is targeted towards women who are young. So, here we go. Examples of that. Dun, dun, dun. And I can't wait to show you some of the samples that my students did last semester because they were really, really good, and y'all are very talented people. Another option is Southern Living. So the article about GMOs, you might want to put that here. So Southern Living has a very specific audience, which is typically women in the South. It's more of a domestic, it's focused towards women and people running their homes. So something that I noticed with a student last semester who wrote an article about, they wrote an article about drying spinach in the microwave, which sounds really boring, but was somehow interesting. Could not tell you why. I think I have that one for you to see. I'm not sure. Anyway, we noticed that a lot of their articles were like foods your mama wouldn't serve, and it's just the language that they used was targeting a very specific audience. So let's see, GMOs. Let's see if we find anything on GMOs. And you'll probably want to do this. You'll play around, try to find an article that's about scientific research, and cow runs across traffic and straight to a Chick-fil-A. Internet goes wild. Not exactly science, but you know. Let's see. I don't see anything about GMOs, but why you need this British condiment on your southern table. So like look, there's a lot of ones that are questions or why. See, Mama goes to the beginning. They're always talking about Mama. Who is Mama? Who is she? I don't know, but they talk about her a lot on this website. Okay. And the last one, I don't think it's going to let me open this. So the New York Times, they have a paywall, and I'm cheap. So I don't have access to it. But you can usually look at 3 articles a month. So I suggest if you want to do the New York Times, go on it, and I would like screenshot what it looks like or an article, save one of their articles as a PDF, print it out so that you can access it. Let's see. It's probably going to be like, it's like you can't, oh, it's letting me read it. New York Times looks very different from Cosmo and Southern Living, Psychology Today, and BuzzFeed. Very different. So they even have a science section. Let's look at the science section. Oh, that is an ugly fish. I like it. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm getting interested in these. How the ultimate live-in boyfriend evolved his way around rejection. So, getting your interest here. And you'll notice there's like a log line or 2 to tell you what this is about. See? It's like you can't read. Okay, well, you got to see it. It has a picture, which is different from a picture you'd see in a scholarly journal, etc. So I want to look really briefly at scholarly journal, the scholarly articles. They're going to look different than your popular sources because they are for other scientists. So here's the hormone one. You have a summary. Look at the title. We have multiple researchers, introduction, subjects and methods, statistics, results, chart. You would not see a chart like this in a popular article because I don't know what that means. And then you have discussion where they're looking at these results, acknowledgments, and look at all these references. Just so you see, if you ever complain about how many references you have to do, because for project 4 you have 10, just look at one of these. That's all I'm going to say. But if you notice, they look very different from your popular articles. So here's another one. You'll notice here in this journal, in the abstract, it breaks it down to background, methods and findings, conclusions. Also notice that this has headings. These articles have headings, and most of your popular articles, some do have headings, many do not. The paragraphs are much longer. Let's go back to, where was I going to go? Let's go to psychology today. Psychology of stage fright. Was I researching it? Actually, I was for a scene. Okay, so let's look at the paragraphs here. They're much shorter. You'll see these hyperlinks. That's how they use references in the popular writing. So we get a picture of this chick sleeping. Why does she not have a real comforter? Why is she in her clothes? Where is her blanket? That is what I want to know. Quote that will take you to an article somewhere else. And then here it's giving you something actionable, like here's 5 strategies to get more sleep. So just notice how different the popular articles are from scholarly articles. So just wanted to show you that. Also, I have no idea what this chart means, or that. Lots of pictures, but here's scholarly. And then let's just take a peek at the other one. Yeah, like dense stuff. So, but fortunately, these are pretty short for this type of article. That's why I chose them, because last semester I had some students who, 1, weren't picking actual lab reports, and 2, they were picking ones that were so long they couldn't even read them. So you just have 3 options. Made it easy for you. All right, I think that's everything I wanted to say about Project 1. Oh, I wanted to show you samples. My bad. Project 1, student samples. I sing a lot. I sing a lot when I teach in class, like something new here. So here we go. Here's an example. Now, if you have another publication you want to do, just email me, run it by me. This student, they did one that was for National Geographic. So you'll see a photo, log line. They copied it. Copied like the formatting. So they had headings, so I would assume that National Geographic does that. Here's one that was BuzzFeed News a student did, and it was about cryogenic preservation. They had a really fun, lighthearted voice because it was for BuzzFeed, so it is different than say the New York Times. Answering questions. Something that's really important to note. Diagrams for Project 1, you need to make sure that you talk about the research. Like, what is the context behind it? Why was this study done? You can briefly explain their methods, like how they did this experiment. But you don't want to get too detailed. And then here's the one that was for Cosmo. It was about science you falling out of love. Notice it looks a lot like the Cosmopolitan website. She even did this here. She did it as a list. I love this. You deserve to be looked at the way Kanye looks at Kanye. Love it. And then they even have like the little quick surveys that they do on Cosmopolitan. And so they designed it to look like that. I believe I have these available to you. Let me just check. Middle and make sure. Week 2. It didn't even take me to week 2. That's not nice. What is happening? Okay, week 2. So I'm going to post this there. I'm going to do that right now, so it won't be a problem for you. Okay, so starting about Project 1, we covered a lot of stuff today. So this week, make sure you read those chapters in the textbook. You have a workshop group activity on popular scholarly sources. I'm going to show you that activity because it involves many moving parts. And then Friday, you need to respond to the reading forum. You need to respond to 2 classmates in that forum. And you need to tell me, this is a very simple assignment, you just have to tell me which scholarly article and which publication you're going to do for Project 1. So what article are you going to translate, and for which publication are you going to translate it? So let's look at that group assignment right here, Scholarly and Popular Source Rhetorical Features Workshop Group. You'll notice there are 2 articles here, or there's 1 article here. So you're going to read a short scholarly article about human body temperatures cooling. I'm going to open that so you can see what it looks like. Okay, there, it disappeared. This is what that article looks like. like, you can skim it. You don't have to, like, read all the data here. I just want you to gain an understanding of the differences between scholarly and popular sources. So just skim through it. I don't expect you to read it. I'm not going to, like, quiz you on it because I don't know. I don't know what methods they use. So just skim it. And then what I would like you to do is read this article, which is a popular article about this scholarly article. So it is literally about that study. It's loading. So it's about the same thing, but it's for the Scientific American. That is a popular source, so it's for the general public that's interested in science. And maybe they're American, I don't know. But, oh, stop. Here's a short article about it. And already you see a lot of differences between the scholarly articles. So you're going to look at that. Look at this fancy chart, but it's different from their fancy chart. Okay. So those are the two articles you need to read for your group assignment. Then what I need you to do is look at this rhetorical features chart. I want you to copy it and paste it into your Google Doc for your group. You can use the same Google Doc for all your assignments, or you can do different ones for each group assignment. As long as I get the link, I don't really care. So, for this chart, essentially you're going to look at different rhetorical features, different elements of rhetoric that writers use, and you're going to describe what you see about the popular source and what you see about the peer-reviewed, aka scholarly source. So, occasion, I don't know. Oh, okay, yeah. That, if you click on that, some of these links are broken. I didn't make this, but I liked it. They will tell you what each of these means. So if you don't know what something means, it will tell you. So let's say, for example, audience and or reader. I'm going to say, okay, who's the audience of the Scientific American? General public interested in science. Who's the audience of the peer-reviewed source? Scientists studying body temperature, something like that. Scholars, I mean. So look at that. These are some questions to guide you. Thinking about the author. Like, you might have to do a little bit of research on these things. So, like, who is the author of this? I'm going to track down some info on them. So we need to fill this out with your group. So it's a group activity, like something like this, like paragraph length. What's the differences you see there? You're going to fill this out with your group. Once you are done, that's like a Tina Belcher noise. No, come on. Once you are done, you're just going to submit the link to your Google Doc right there. And then here's your reading responsive forum for this week. It's very simple. I just want you to tell me which of the following parts of rhetorical situation do you think are the most influential? What is the one that makes the most difference when constructing a text? So you have author, audience, and purpose. There's no really right or wrong answer. I know what I think. They're all kind of tied together. But I just want you to tell me what you think and why. I suggest you use specific examples from the activity you do with your group. Like, audience was most important to the popular article because XYZ or something. And then respond to two of your classmates. Alright, so I think that's everything we need to cover for week 2. This is a long one. It's like 50 minutes. Sorry, but it'll be a lot shorter, I think, the next 2 weeks. Yeah, because next week we're peer reviewing. So, yeah, that's what you gotta do. I'll put up this slide again. There you go. That's what you got this week. You've survived 2 weeks. Maybe you haven't yet if you're watching this at the beginning of the week, but you will. Email me if you need anything. My office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's all.